This particular video, I just would like to do a few thoughts that I have jotted down. So I'm going to call it a few thoughts jotted on notepaper. So the first thought is, pain, pleasure, life, death, all else is conjecture. Meaning life is about pain, right? We want to avoid pain as much as we can. Pleasure, of course, it can be intellectual pleasure, emotional pleasure, that's regulated by the mind, because the heart is regulated by the mind. Like I said, physical pleasure, mental pleasure, things of that nature. And those that are a little nutty out there, even spiritual pleasure, if you believe in all that stuff. And then, of course, you have life, right? So once you're born, wow, you got life. And then eventually, as time goes by, hopefully you die of a naturally aging process, and you eventually die. And then and then that's it, period. And then all else is conjecture, meaning anything that can be speculated upon or, imagined or reasoned or whatever have you, it falls into this category. Life is, opinions, conclusions. Sometimes it's on incomplete information, or any of that stuff. Speculation, you believe this, you think this, you hypothesize about this, you suppose this, you presume that. And hopefully, as well as also find some basic truth in life, and mainly the sciences through methodology, hopefully through that, you're able to find things like, well, there's gravity, that there's equals mc squared, that that you can walk on the moon as long as you're in a suit that with sufficient oxygen, and you won't float away if you're stabilized with a hose. So, or things of that nature. So there are basic things that are actually real for your own good, because like for instance, a person that goes up on the moon can actually float away, right? If you can float away, right? That's what's going to happen. If you're not stabilized, well, you're going to just float away out into outer space, into nowhere, and you can't do anything about it. But that's not good for you, is it? That's not good for you at all. It's actually quite painful, because eventually any oxygen that is in your suit is going to deplete, and you're going to die a horrible death. So, of course, because that's a painful experience, humans prefer not to do that unless you're insane or, well, it's a funny thing. The mentally retarded may do that. But when they're in the suffocation mode, they're going to be thinking, holy shit, what's happening here? And I want this to stop. So in a sense, in an abstract way, even the mentally retarded want to avoid pain. So, and even a mentally ill person wants to avoid pain. If you put a paranoid, schizophrenic, delusionary person out there in outer space floating around, then he loses oxygen, he suffocates, he might actually have a thought or two like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So basically, we all avoid pain in one way or another. Those that are sane or relatively average intelligence or above, even borderline retardation, like 85, 80 IQ, gets the idea that you want to have pleasures and pain. Those that are really 15 IQ, 20 IQ, even maybe 30 IQ, can't maybe understand that. But if you took this pen and you went like this to its skin, the child or the man or your woman's going to react away from it, most likely, unless you're into sadomasochism stuff. Some people like a lot of pain, like that, be tortured and all that shit. Don't really get that, but that's what people like. Some people. Thank goodness they're in the extreme minority. So that is basically pain, pleasure, life, and death. Then the next thing is sort of follows up on the death issue, or the subject matter, and that is death equals decomposition. The body will live in the belly of a cockroach after decomposition. So people that are religious or believe in God and stuff think that they're going to go somewhere else to heaven and come out of their bodies as spirits, and they're going to be in a spirit world, and they're going to float around, and see God, meet God. You're going to be with your family, with your pet animals. You'll be with all of nature, I guess. There'll be a lot of ants and cockroaches up there, and a lot of flies. Some people actually believe that insects also have a soul and have somewhat of a spiritual life as well. Not spiritual life, but more like we're all connected, right? Like the Hindus and the Buddhists, they believe everything's connected. So when they go to this heaven, I assume, let me look that up. I assume that a Hindu believes in heaven. Okay, so in Hinduism, life in heaven and hell are not permanent. Soul goes there, spends certain portion of its karma, and returns after some time to be born in earth again. So they believe in a reincarnation, but you still go to heaven or you go to hell for a period of time. I would imagine that because they believe everything is one, that there's a bunch of insects and cockroaches and bees and all kinds of nasty animals up there in heaven. Rocks, mountains, volcanoes, earthquakes. Let's see what the Buddhas believe in heaven with heaven. They're also into one stuff, right? Let me see if they do this crap. The Buddhist concept of heaven and hell is entirely different from that in other religions. Buddhists do not accept that these places are eternal. It is unreasonable to condemn a man to eternal hell for his human weakness, but quite reasonable to give him every chance to develop himself. From the Buddhist point of view, those who go to hell can work themselves upward by making use of the merit that they had acquired previously. There are no locks on the gates of hell. Hell is a temporary place, and there is no reason for those things to suffer there forever. So you still have a hell. So you have a hell, I'm sure they have a heaven. Everyone, eventually you go to heaven or whatever, and you're going to have cockroaches, insects, and everything else. All right, okay, leave it. So even people that believe in spirituality or heavens and hells and all this, still going to wind up with a bunch of cockroaches and all kinds of crap if you believe everything all have souls, right? So, and I know that's an extreme scenario, but nevertheless, it's quite true. If everything has a soul. But I believe, through reasoning and through a very long time on earth, I'm 56 years old, I've been a man of reason or / atheist since I was about 30 years old. Through reason, it tells me very clearly that what's going to happen to you after you die is that your body automatically decomposes. There are actually bacteria or cells that are inside your body as you're alive that are somewhat lie dormant for many, many years during your whole life. And then the moment you die, they actually spring to life in a way, in a sense, and they start to decompose your body. And that's what's going to happen to me, unfortunately. I don't look forward to that. Sometimes you pass by cemeteries. Go down the road, see a cemetery. Now, those people that were in those cemeteries were talking just like me. Talking, socializing with people, being in love, loving, being loved. They had jobs. They went to school. Who knows? They might even went to the moon, walked on the moon. I don't know. The point is those cemeteries with buried people on them actually lived a life very much just like you and I. Very little difference. More or less, basically went through pain and pleasure, the things that humans go through as well as animals. So it's rather interesting, on a sad note, that those people that have died, I will be there too. And someday someone will go down the road, and I really don't care what happens to my body. But let's say if they stick me in a hole in the ground in a cemetery or wherever the hell they do, doesn't matter because I'm dead, so I don't care. But let's say that's the benefit of the doubt. Let's say I'm dropped into a box, put it in the grave, where I'm sure no one's going to take care of my gravesite, so it'd be all grown over or whatever. But anyway, let's say I'm in this cemetery, in a box in a hole in the ground. Somebody's going to walk by it or drive by it, and they might have the same thought that I'm having. That is, those people in there, or that person right there, me included with the rest of the bodies that would be dead in the ground, have also lived a life as well, one time in assorted manners. And that's not a very good thing to look forward to, but that's reality, and that's the truth. And so eventually your body will decompose, and then you'll be either dropped into a hole in the ground, you could be cremated and, scattered over the Pacific Ocean or whatever have you, or however you want to be, or actually have an extravagant burial, or just be a very quiet burial and throw you in a box and stick it in a hole in the ground. I really don't. Or you can donate your body to science. You could do that too. And can you imagine laying there on the table? Because when I visited a friend that was, this is a long time ago, in 1986, he was being educated to be a doctor. And he showed me all the cadaver room with the bodies all laid out. Because I'm a writer, so he thought that I'd be, intrigued by it. Which I was sort of intrigued, but not really. And all these bodies laying out on these slabs. And most of them were all opened up. Or there was one body with the lady of a head was cut off, and he actually handed me this old lady's head with strangly hair and teeth all messed up and hair coming out of the nose and everything. And I'm holding this thing. He thought I'd be intrigued by it. I'm like, what the fuck am I holding this dead body's, this old lady's head in my hands? It's kind of fucking weird. From a scientific point of view, or from a would-be someday would be, a student being educated in medicine to be a doctor someday, or a doctor himself holding one of these heads, it would be no problem because they study them. It's not just to hold the head, but to actually study them. So that was kind of weird. But, if you donate your body to science, or as for your organs or whatever have you, they're going to take a knife and cut you open and pop you open. I can't imagine, like my stomach, or just like my hand, my arm here, they're going to slice this open it up. I mean, it's much easier said than done. You think about it. I mean, it's as easy to open it up. I mean, if the body is dead, they're going to just cut it open like you would cut a piece of bread. It would be no different. But I'm saying, being alive and thinking about how they're going to cut you open and break you open and take this vein out here and study the bone or whatever, it's fucking, to me, absolutely insane. Think about it. But you're dead, so it doesn't matter. But when you're alive and you start thinking about it, it's like, holy shit, Because if I just try to bend my finger back, that shit starts to hurt. Or if I pinch my fucking finger, that shit starts to hurt. And yet when I'm dead, they're going to take a knife and just slice me right the fuck open. That's pretty fucked up. To just imagine, because that's all you can do while you're alive. You can only imagine how it would be to be laying there and be cut open, but it doesn't really matter because you're dead, so you don't feel anything. There's no sensory perceptions or anything on your skin. You're just a piece of dead meat. Like I'm I am a omnivore. You know, I eat steak or pork chops, lamb chops, chicken, whatever. Once that head comes off the animal, it's as good as dead, literally. And, you know, you cook it and you have it on your plate and you cut into the meat and you eat it. And you don't really think anything of it other than it tastes fucking good. But they had to cut into that animal as well. Now, it's the same thing that they're going to do to you or anyone, especially on the autopsy. Everyone pretty much goes through that. Unless you're splattered into a zillion pieces. The only thing left is your bones. But most likely you're going to wind up in an autopsy or a medical coroner's office, and you're going to be laid out on the slab, and for him to do his autopsy, he's got to cut into you to see what's going on, you know. So I know it sounds morbid, but it's very true, you know. And this is the things that people can't handle. Can't handle the fact that they're going to cut you completely open, that your body's going to decompose, that there's bacteria and cells inside your body that's going to literally eat you from inside out till there's nothing left. And eventually, if they stick you in a hole in the ground, your body be nothing but bones. Actually, that's the only thing. Like if you've been dead for like 100 years or whatever, you know, the only thing really left is bones and teeth. And that's how they really identify you, is through your teeth, because they can still extract some DNA through there. So anyway, that's death. When I think of death, I think in terms of decomposition or being sliced open by a doctor, either because you donated your body to science and or by a medical coroner that's going to poke around in your body to see why you died. And that is what you call reality. But of course a lot of people can't handle that, so they create all this imagination with, you know, gods and heavens and all this shit. And they just can't face the simple fact that we actually, all we do when we die is we decompose. And then the other little thing I wrote down, the little note I wrote down is free speech and action. You know, when I think of being an American, I think in terms of having freedom of speech, like what I speak about on like YouTube, and then of action as well. Now, of course, you can't do everything you like. You can't say everything you like. You can't incite violence. You can't provoke violence. And you can actually turn your thoughts into action and therefore act out what you think. If you want to assassinate somebody or you want to hurt someone or whatever, there's penalties for that. I'm extremely hard on that, in the sense that if I was on a jury and it was a very gruesome, horrific murder, I'm going to stick your ass on death row without question. And hopefully the appeal process is extremely short time. I would prefer 6 months or less for the gruesome murderers out there. But nevertheless, I always use the line, you can think whatever you like, but just don't act on everything you think. And if you live by that during your life, that little sort of like code of like a little rule that you can make, a little self-rule, you could think whatever you like. It doesn't matter what you think. You can think whatever you like, really. There's really no crime against that. It really is not. But once you put it into action, and when I'm saying action, I don't mean just with moving around like with your feet or with your hands, but actually talking, okay? Or you can even look at someone and scare the hell out of them, things of that nature. So but as long as it stays in your head, then it's not a crime. At least not now. Maybe someday it will be. It'll be like Minority Report. Your thoughts in your head will know before you act. Before you act on something, they'll know what you thought about, so they can prevent any act that you do. Who knows? I'm sure they figured out everything else pretty much in science. I'm sure they're going to figure that shit out too. But anyway, meanwhile, you can think whatever you like, just don't act on everything you think. And outside of that, as long as you're not hurting anyone or hurting yourself, live your life as you like. That's the great thing about America. Of course, you got to abide by the laws and the rules and regulations and things like that. Then the other little note that I wrote down was called imagination intelligence. Don't confuse the two. And that's usually what happens, especially in religion. You could be an Einstein. You could be the most intelligent person on the earth, and yet still get mixed up and think that there's a heaven or a hell or a God or all that other shit. And God, heaven, hell, all this shit is imagination. That's all it is, imagination. Some guy, thousands of years ago, started to write down something, and another guy thought about that, wrote about that, and then another guy, and on 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 and went until 2015, where most religions, if not like 90, unless someone's coming up with a new idea, but usually even that new idea is based on some old religion. It's just interpreted different and all kinds of shit. But all the belief systems in religion today, it could be Islam, it could be Christianity, it can be Catholicism, it can be Judaism, it can be Buddha, Hindu, whatever the fuck have you, was written at one time by some person or persons long time ago. And that long time ago person was looking at the sky and thinking to himself, there's got to be something more than just out there. When I die, there's got to be more than this. And then they see their loved ones dying or dead, and they're like, I can't handle this. There's got to be something more to it than that. And so they start writing down their thoughts, or they have folklore, and most of it's verbal. So they hand down these thoughts and these like rules and morality or whatever have you, generation to generation to generation to generation till 2015. So some guy or girl in 2015 believing in religion is all based upon some guy or girl even thousands of years ago, if not tens of thousands of years ago, if not 100,000 years ago, or if not millions of years ago, that thought, well, there's got to be more to it than this. Got to be more to it than pain, pleasure, life, and death. Got to be more to it than that. So then they started thinking about it, and they imagined all this shit. And then the problem is, as far as I'm concerned, is that you start to believe it, that it's actually true, that there's actually a heaven, a hell, and all this other shit. There's God or whatever. There's a devil. Some people even believe in the devil. People worship Lucifer and worship Satan. It's all in the imagination. And the irony of it all is all that Satan means is something that's bad or immoral, and something that is God or Shem or Allah or whatever have you, or the Pope or whatever, is something that stands for something good or moral. Just other words for other things. Really what it comes down to is pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure dictate morality. I mean, there's never been someone, in other words, there's never been a nice murder. Think about it. Can you name, maybe put that under the video if you ever watched this video. Can you name one nice murder that's ever been out there? There's never been a nice murder out there. So, that's because it has to do with pain. And pain dictates morality as well as pleasure dictates morality. I mean, sex feels fucking good. But then again, better not have sex in the middle of the street. A police officer is going to come by, cite your ass, or haul your ass off to jail. So, unless you're in the deep woods of Montana somewhere and no one's around. But anyway, but the other great thing about imagination is creativity. So then you could think up paintings, sculptures, stage plays, novels, you name it, films, whatever. And that's the great thing. So imagination, as long as you put it and realize that it's just a fictional piece, then it can be great. Then your imagination actually works for you. It really does. I mean, heaven and hell and all, God and all this other shit, Jesus and all this stuff, heaven, hell, Lucifer, Satan, whatever the hell have you, the devil, whatever. I mean, that maybe works for you, but you're just bullshitting yourself. It's just fictional. It's imagination. People that actually do an imaginative piece, like film, stage play, novel, whatever have you, sculpture, painting, whatever, realize as while they're doing it, it's actually just an expression of oneself, or it's sort of an expression of how they see the world, and they put it in this whatever expressive form that they do, in whatever expressive art form that they do. But they realize that it's imagination. It's come from my head. People that are in religion can't make out the difference. They actually believe it's real. And then, of course, the other side of it is the intelligence. That is reasoning, thinking, being abstract, being even concrete, general. But mainly reasoning, being logical, putting things one and one together. Like I remember when I was in school in college, I took a philosophy class, and one of the very first things he ever said out of his mouth was, if A equals B and B equals C, then therefore C is A. I mean, that's logic. Simple, extremely simple thing. But then when you get into like death and like what pain, pleasure, God, and all this other shit, then it becomes very abstract, and that's where your intelligence kick into play to figure it all out. I once had an intelligence IQ test when I was 9 years old, a little over 9 years old, in 1968. And the guy who gave me the test said I had an IQ of 126, and that if I didn't have problems at home, I probably would it would be above that. So I figure my IQ is probably in the low 130s. I don't consider myself genius. I know I'm not that. But I'm definitely around like, probably huckering around like 130, 132, around in there. That's where I figure. It's just like in the low 130s or just like 130, like right in that area. And I can reason very well. Now, someone that's mentally retarded has a problem with a lot of reasoning. They don't contemplate about God. Most of it's rote. Someone tells them something, they believe it. They don't even know what the hell they understand. They have no. If I have a mentally retarded cousin-in-law, I actually put him up on YouTube in one of my bananas video, and he comes over once in a while. And if he believes in God, he believes in Jesus, and he listens to spiritual songs and all this stuff. But I once asked him, "What is God to you?" And he was like completely, he didn't know what to say. Because he accepts God as some place he's going to go. God exists, period, in his mind. He was taught that by his mother and his father, who also were religious. They believe in God as well. He will never, ever, during his entire lifetime, think outside of that. Period. He was conditioned to believe in God, to believe in Jesus. He will never have another thought outside of that. Thinking, well, maybe there isn't Jesus, or maybe there isn't God. Well, what is this God? Does God have this history? People writing down shit, scribes, all this other shit. He's never going to think that way. Now, a person with intelligence will contemplate that. Think about it. Reason it out. Majority of the people around the world believe in God, Jesus, all this other shit, heaven, hell. And people in the minority hardly ever do. And usually those that are pretty intelligent are the ones that either don't believe in God or somewhat agnostic, or they sort of redefine what God is and say, like Einstein, everything works like sort of not mechanically, but everything works in sync. in the universe. So everything sort of, unless a meteorite comes out of the blue and crashes into Einstein's house, which it didn't happen, don't get me wrong. But let's say a meteorite out of the blue smashed into Einstein's house, and just completely smashed it all over to bits. So much for everything working perfectly, huh? Anyway, but that's intelligence. Intelligence is logic and reason and things of that nature. And math has a lot to do with it. Math is very logical, very within reason, for the most part. So that's what you have. And so don't confuse it too. Just because you believe in God doesn't mean you're intelligent, by the way. Now, I would hope, not that they all are, but there are highly intelligent people out there that actually believe in God. And I figure that's just more of a sort of a pseudo mental illness that they just didn't think through, even though they're maybe intelligent, highly intelligent in the sciences, or whatever have you, or in the arts. Never really thought it through. They should meet me. I'll make sure they think it through. Anyway, and then one other little thing I wrote down was martial arts. All it is situational awareness, technique, and discipline. Now, I'm no martial arts guy, but last night I was listening to these two guys talk about it in this Pal Talk chat room, and it was really interesting. Talking about it for like 2 hours. And bored the entire room, but it did not bore me. And because I realized that martial arts is actually a highly intelligent art. It really is. And even a science, for that matter. To study your opponent. And I came away with 3 things. That is situational awareness. That is, you see everything around you. And then your technique as how you do your karate chops or kicks or throws or whatever the hell, bends or whatever they do there. And then in order to have both those things work together in time and everything, timing everything out, is you have to have discipline. You have to be focused. You have to your body has to be pretty toned. You got to be able to swing around that kick to kick the other guy, whatever. And you have to have the discipline, and a lot of that has to do with breathing exercises and getting in tune with your body and being on a good diet and things of that nature. I mean, if you're 700 pounds, I'm sure you're not going to be a very good karate person or into the martial arts. Unless you can get that guy under you, then that person might not be able to get up from under a person that's 600 pounds. But I'm sure a person in the martial arts can take that 600-pound person and kick his fucking ass inside out through that discipline, through that technique, and that situational awareness. It doesn't matter if you're big or small or whatever. Rather interesting. So as a kid, when I was like 15, 16 years old, my friend was into the karate, and he would do his breathing exercises and all this shit. I used to be mesmerized by that. I used to read all his books and stuff. I never did it. I started to do the breathing exercises, try to do meditation. I remember doing that for a little while, for about a month or so, and then I moved on to something else. But the thing is that's what it's all about. It's about discipline, to focus, to your breathing, to come down into that very calm mode, to look around you, get that situational awareness, and then through your techniques of whatever they may be, go after your opponent. Very interesting, very interesting. So they are my 5 thoughts or more of my that I wrote down, and so I'm going to call it a few thoughts jotted on notepaper. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and you guys have a good one. Bye.